Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
In each session, we are going to also talk about the analytics and how IT, information technology, is changing or bringing a different level of value to the HR function. So, here also we will look at, we need to talk about, we need to discuss, we need to be aware of that online testing has become a very powerful tool in the recruitment process. Recruitment for the telephonic pre-screening is again a very cost effective method. The telephonic pre-screening has also been recognized as a cost saving and effective way of recruitment process. Virtual inbox test meaning a person is given a virtual inbox which is typical of the inbox the incumbent in that job for which the person is appearing for the test faces, generally has, and the person has to respond to those emails. Those are generally designed emails or the fake emails, but the issues are very similar to what a person likely to face, what an incumbent likely to face in that job. So, depending upon the responses to those emails or the virtual inbox, a person can be judged and the recruitment people and experts can judge the suitability and the readiness of the candidate for that particular position. Online problem solving test, again, that can be in the form of case study, that can be in the form of simulation or some hypothetical questions. So, online problem solving test can have at least these three and many other forms, and those things can be computerized and the online assessment is possible. Type of test, as we have already briefly discussed, we are going to discuss a little more about it. So, first we looked at the specialized work sample test, which is creating a situation, creating a test situation wherein person has to face or has to work on the instrument or the machine, or here person has to work with those kind of people or situation which are the which he or she likely to face in the real job. So, specialized work sample tests have to be designed and they can be very useful. We saw in the previous slide that the validity of these tests are found to be more than 0.5. So, they are some of the most valid tests in the recruitment process. A numerical ability test is about testing the analytical skills and the general intelligence. Reading comprehension test is a test of the verbal capability, it is also the test of the communication skills, and then there are tests like clerical comparing and checking test. These things test the person's ability to minutely look at the data or minutely look at the record and find faults or maintain the correct record. At this stage, I would like to mention about the most commonly used psychometric test. MBTI is very popular. It is a very commonly used personality test. It gives 16 types of personality based on 4 preferences, and preferences always have 2 things. So, 8 elements constitute 4 references, and these 8 elements constitute the 16 types of personality. So, these the comparison is done between extroversion and introversion, intuition and sensing, whether person is of a thinking type or feeling type, person is of a judging type versus perceiving type. So, based on the preference and based on the person's inclination to process information in certain way, or dealing with the other individuals in certain way, and that can be related to introversion, extroversion, intuition, sensing, etc. We come up with the personality type. Big 5 personality type again has become very popular. The modified form of that is also called hexaco personality type. Candidates who are interested to read further can look at it, but here we are talking about the more basic thing, that is big 5 personality type, which is developed based on a large sample of the human respondents, human adult respondents, and it was found that generally personality have these 5 dimensions, and that provides the insight on the ability to relate with others. So, those dimensions are extroversion, openness, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and neuroticism. They are not at the two ends of a continuum or ends of multiple continuum. These 5 are independent personality characteristics, but in multiple studies it is found that in certain jobs some of these 5 rather 4 personalities are found to be more suitable. Fifth is neuroticism, which is basically about unstable mind and emotional state. So, that is dysfunctional in most of the jobs, but other 4 may be relevant or may be more relevant in different kind of jobs. Then comes the series of or the body of occupational interest inventories. The example of interest inventory is the Holland interest inventory, which is most common. What these inventories measure are the level of interest of candidates on different tasks and activity, whether the person has the artistic inclination, musical inclination, inclination to work with numbers, inclination to work with the shapes and forms. Likewise, so the occupational, so according to the liking for these things, we can infer in what kind of occupations the person can be interested. Then comes the battery of or the body of situational judgment test. Situational judgment test, some of them can be structured, but mostly the situational judgment tests are prepared specific to particular jobs and particular situations. They help the recruiting agency or the organization to help and to assess to what extent person is able to handle the situation and see the responses, and based on the responses they can judge whether person can handle a particular situations which are frequently occurring situation in that particular job. Aptitude test is similar to occupational interest test, but aptitude test is more broad based. More younger people can take the aptitude test, that can help them to identify the streams of the career they would like to pursue. That is general aptitude test measuring the cognitive skills like logical reasoning, decision making, problem solving, and that helps in determining whether the candidate are quick learner and whether they possess the basic skills which can be improved and developed through training. Work sample and simulations are another type of test. First type of work sample is the work sample, means you need someone to work on the MS Excel, and then you in the testing you give one exercise to be done in the MS Excel. That is a straightforward work sample test. Then there is a category of the management assessment centers. Management assessment centers are generally the combination of exercises. Generally people with the high potential and promotability are asked to go through the management assessment centers. Management assessment centers are conducted few hours to multiple days, wherein thorough assessment of the competencies required for the existing and the future role is done with multiple tests. One test can be work sample, another test can be of the virtual inbox, another work assessment in the management assessment center, one test can be, another test can be based on the simulation, case study. So, this is the constellation of tests. However, they are aligned to existing competency requirements or the future competency requirements of the candidate. Then comes the video based situational testing and miniature job training and evaluation. How person respond to a particular training, particular input, and how they like that those input, that tells about person's interest and aptitude in that particular job. And the video situational testing is like any situational testing. This in this category simulations can also fall, wherein person is virtually in the situation which is similar to what he or she is likely to face in the job or in the most critical moments of the job, and the person's response is assessed in those situational testing. Interview is very commonly, perhaps the most commonly used methods of recruitment. So, in this session we are going to dedicate substantial time for the recruitment on the interview process. Interview is a formal method, it is a exchange of information between two people. Interview needs to be clear about the purpose of the exchange, why this interview is happening. Is this to test the personality, or to test the job knowledge, or to test the person interest or the personal energy, and so many reasons are there for people to interview the candidate. So, the reasons must be clear, the purpose must be clear, and it has to be relevant and revealing to the candidate, and we must ensure that time is used to give and obtain information. You need not to spend too much time on the niceties, and need not to spend time on something which is not relevant for a particular job, for that job, for the job for which the interview is taking place. Interviewers have certain responsibility to make the interview an effective process, otherwise interview can be very ineffective process of selection. Interviewer must be well prepared. They must, and what is the meaning of well prepared? Meaning of well prepared is the interviewer must go through the job analysis of the candidate, must be aware of the responsibilities, likely responsibilities, the working condition person will have to perform, what will be his role, what will be his performance expectations, all that interviewer must be clear about that. Information gathering from the various sources should happen, the job and the person, means you need to look at the job in a holistic way, and you need to talk to the supervisor for the role of the for which the recruitment process or interview process is going on. Depicting the job in the correct perspective is also very important. In the interview, generally interviewee ask about the job, even if they do not ask, it is a responsibility of the interviewer to give the correct picture about the job for which person is appearing. Promoting the organization, that is a time, that is an occasion where they communicate the brand equity of the organization. We are going to talk about employer branding, a very important factor in making HR process successful and attracting new talent or retaining the talent in the organization. Employer branding is extremely important. So, interview is also a time to promote the brand of the organization, and it has to be very, very fair. It has to be clearly fair process. Person, the interview must be given sufficient time to prepare, must be given timely notice, he must be given enough time to frame his answers, to put forth his responses, and also opportunity to express if person is going through some difficulty or challenge. A model structured interview process looks like this: before the interview, conducting job analysis, developing question, developing rating scale, determining the purpose of the interview, training if required of the interviewer. Not all of us can be natural interviewers, so we need, many of us may need training. So, all that has to be done before the interview. During the interview, generally we need to provide the background of the interview and the organization, and then ask questions. After initial rounds of question, probing is useful to know a little more about the candidate and validate the response of the candidate. We must take notes. All of us tend to remember what we like to remember, but notes help us to remember and recall what may not be the most impressive thing or most influential thing at the time of the interview. A good interview also allows candidate to ask question if they have any and answer those questions. After the interview, scoring should be done. It is advisable that scoring must be done right after the interview. If we delay, if we do not score the interview right after it gets over, we tend to forget certain things and some of the recency effect takes over. Sometime our other biases, which we are going to talk about later, going to take over. So, we must respond, we must score, we must give the score right after the interview. We need to follow up with the organizers of the interview and the candidate, conduct the further assessment or make selection, conducting the further assessment if required. Many times interview has to be followed by second round of interview. So, there has to be a clarity what we assess on the first round and what we need to assess in the second round. We are going to talk about what are the prominent points of assessment or points of conversation in the second round of interview in this session, and then evaluation and refining the interview should keep happening. In this reflection process, we may realize that okay, some questions are very effective to bring out the aptitude or certain things, certain competencies of the candidate in comparison to some other questions. So, we need to keep building the pool of the good questions. If we are in a profession for a stable period of time and we keep meeting new recruits for the selection, then over the years we must have to develop a good pool of effective research, effective interview question, which can help us to assess the employee, their aptitude or competency in a fair and in clearer way. Interview can be consisted of different types of questions, and different types of questions have different functions. For example, we can provide questions offhand to the before the interview to the candidates, and that can help the person to prepare well, and then we can check the level of preparation. We can ask questions that are easy to research, means we can give the ready-made, we can give the question in advance, and they may not be very difficult questions, they can be easy questions. For example, describing the company or looking at the job profile or what that job may entail, all these are simple to prepare, but if candidate does not prepare, it shows the lack of seriousness on the part of the candidate. So, these questions are also useful in their own way. Then comes the more open-ended thought-provoking questions that help in assessing the critical thinking ability of the on the part of candidates. Hypothetical questions may also be used, and they are used to understand the decision making process. In particular situation, how person can respond, and that helps in assessing the creativity of the person as well as the person's suitability or the depth of his experience. We can ask also a candidate to teach a concept, because that can bring out the listening skills and communication skills of the candidate. Particular aspect of their work can also be asked, particularly less attractive aspects or more difficult aspects of the work, and the questions can be asked about that, and that is the reflection, the response of the candidate to those questions is the reflection about the interest of that candidate in that job. Here I would like to mention one method called STAR method. it is a method of structured interview. STAR stands for an acronym, that is situation, T for task, A for action, and R for result. Before we understand the and discuss more about the STAR method, I would like to remind you the 12 most common competencies looked out in the job. These competencies are communication, result orientation or achievement orientation, customer focus, teamwork, leadership, planning and organizing, commercial and business awareness, flexibility or adaptability, developing others, problem solving, analytical skills, and building relationships. Some of them you can see there is some overlap, but in our research we have found these are the most these 12 are the most common competencies identified in the corporate or in most of the jobs, and competencies actually reside in any incumbent or any employee at different levels. So, the competency can be at the basic level or good understanding level, maybe in depth, or the person may be expert in that competency. So, for example, definition 1, planning and organizing, this is a very commonly sought after competency. The first thing is we need to have a clear definition. So, definition of the planning and organizing is the ability to visualize a sequence of actions needed to achieve goal and to estimate the resources required. A preference for acting in a structured and thorough manner, that is the definition of planning and organizing. Level 1 competency, which we expect in a junior manager level, is about managing own time, personal activities, breaks complex activity into the manageable task, identify possible obstacles and plan in advance, etc. For middle level managers, the planning and organizing will be more complex, and the higher level of this competency will be required at the middle level. That means what? That means the person is able, person produces contingency plans for possible future occurrences. It estimates in the advance, the person estimates in advance the resources and time scales. Person also coordinates team activities to make the best use of individual skills and specialities. All that is needed to meet the team objective, and that is crucial at the middle level management. Then at the senior level, planning and organizing means identifying the longer term operational implication of the business plan and effectively planning the utilization of the resources. These are the two most crucial things in the planning and organizing at the senior management level. So, we must understand that competency is not one uniform thing. Competencies reside at different levels, and the assessment of the competency also has to happen according to the level required in a particular role or in particular employee holding a particular role. It is beneficial to conduct the recruitment and selection process in line with the competencies, and you might remember in the PCMM framework we discussed that level 3 is very crucial. Level 3 is like a critical thing, because that is the level where we have a foundation on which 4th and 5th can be possible. No organization can reach to 4th and 5th without mastering at level 3, and that level 3 talks about competency based HR processes and systems. So, how it means in the context of recruitment and selection. In the context of recruitment and selection, it means experience with the range of organizations show that they improve our accuracy in assessing people's suitability and potential for different jobs. So, we need to design the recruitment selection process according to the competencies required. And what are the competencies? We have already discussed. We have also discussed competency means the expression of those competency happens to be at different levels. So, it facilitates the closer match between person's skill and interest and the demands of the job. It helps preventing interviewer and assessor for making snap judgments about people or from judging them on characteristics that are irrelevant to the job in question. They can be used to underpin the structure, the full range of assessment and development techniques, because when we know which are the competencies required, we can appropriately choose which selection method, what kind of application, what kind of test have to be employed. And when we align the recruitment selection process to towards the competencies, it disaggregates the individual profile into specific skills and characteristics, and based on that specific development plans can also be designed. We specifically know what aspect of competency is needed to be improved or enhanced in the incumbent or in the employee. So, there is lot of merit on designing HR processes according to or on the basis of the competency map, and recruitment and selection process is not an exception to that. In fact, recruitment and selection process to be effective in any way, they require some understanding of competencies required in different roles. We will discuss two interview methods, behavioral description interview, which is based on the demonstrated behavior for a particular competency. So, example is given about written communication. So, written communication, if we employ the behavioral description interview, the questions will be about, and questions will be to check the ideas, whether person is able to express ideas in the written clearly, in writing clearly, with correct grammar and spelling, and in the well organized way. So, how we can judge that, how we can talk about it during the interview? Some of the questions are like, what has been the nature of writing you have done in your present position? Can you tell me about the recent example of your writing report, or writing market, writing a memo, or writing a report, or depending on whatever is the requirement in the current job, we can ask this question. What have been the most complex reports you have written? So, maybe letter, minutes, proposals, which are the most complex one, and what was the complexity involved, how you dealt with that, what was your strategy, how you communicated ideas in that document. So, these are some of the examples of conducting behavioral description interview. Another example of behavioral description interview can be understood in the form of analytical thinking. It identifies, so first we need to have an operational definition. So, analytical thinking meaning person identifies concerns and causes of problems and finds links between information from various sources. So, think about what questions we can ask to assess the analytical thinking. So, the questions given here as an example are like, can you think of a recent situation you faced which required analytical thinking? That is one. What has been one of the most challenging situation which required your analysis? These are just two examples, but these examples are aimed at deciphering, bringing out the behavior of the person in that particular role. So, coming back to the STAR method, that is again an approach of the interviewing. STAR stands for an acronym, S, where S is for situation, T is for task, A is for action, and R is for result. In this method, about certain competency, we need to ask about the situation, in which situation you demonstrated the decision making capability, or in which situation you demonstrated the analytical capability, or what aspect of job required to do a complex or difficult communication, like this. So, first we ask about the situation, then we ask about what do you do or what you did in that situation. So, suppose this is the situation about making a suppose this is a situation about leading organization through a difficult phase. So, the person, and if the competency is about leadership, person can be asked, particularly for the senior position, which is the most difficult situation your team has faced, wherein you were able to help them to move out and work further and do well. So, you can ask to describe the situation. Then the second question can be about the task, means what exactly you did, what was the required, what are the major chunk of your role. So, the person may say, okay, it was about inspiring people, it was about giving them the clearer path, it is about solving their problem, it is about preventing them to get influenced by the naysayers or the difficult customers. Like these, the person can identify some of the tasks required at the time of the difficult situation his team was facing. Then the next question is about the action. So, if the person says that my job was to inspire team members or to solve the problems or to help them to deal with the difficult customers, the next question was next question can be about the action. That means, okay, so what was the, who can you think about one difficult customer and how you handle how you helped your team to handle that difficult customer, or how did you inspired people to continue even when the result was not very obvious and the path was difficult. What was the difficulty and how you could influence them, how you could inspire them to continue on that path, like this. So, task leads to action and actions are the actual act of the person to perform that task in a particular role, and then we can ask the result. Okay, so, what was the result, what happened to your team after 6 months or after 3 months, what was the engagement level of the employees once they perform their duty, and when your team was out of that difficult time, what was their engagement level, what was their morale, what was the business result, what was the team performance, what was the efficiency, what was the innovation you did. Likewise, these are the manifested forms of the behavior. Before we end this session, we need to understand that interviews can be and generally performed in multiple rounds. So, in the first round, when you see the more general questions, in the second round question become more specific, more particular about the job and about the company, company culture and significant plans and objective, how the industry is doing, who is doing what in that industry. These kind of questions which are more in depth, they are more about research and technical aspect of the job and anticipate the specific question posed in the language of the industry. So, that is the time when you expect person to use, the incumbent to use the language of the industry, and we can also ask behavioral questions or situational questions, little more difficult and complex situational question in the second round of interview. Conducting interview is not easy thing. We all prone to certain mistakes. Some of these mistakes are, so the second problem is, second error can come because of our leniency, meaning some of us have the habit of giving more than average marks anyways in whichever situation or in whichever test or in whichever assessment they sit. So, the leniency can be the problem, it can be an error, it can be cause of the error. Strict, like leniency, strictness can also be cause of error. If I have I have made the decision that in my career I have not given anyone more than 70 out of 100 in my course, then that can be out of my strictness, and no matter whosoever, no matter who has done the best and extremely good, even then if my limitation is that I will be giving 75 or 76 max out of 100, that becomes the problem of the strictness, because when it is this score is compared with the scores given by other teachers, and if they are lenient, then the good candidate will lose out if they somehow happen to be in your panel. Central tendency is the next rating error, the tendency of giving everyone the average score, not distinguishing good candidate with the best candidate with the average candidate with the poor candidates and giving the average marks to everyone, or near about average marks to everyone, that is that causes the error. Contrast can also cause the error, means some people have the liking for the people who are very different from them, and they as a result of that preference, psychological preference, they may give very high or very low marks to this person. Stereotyping, it is about attributing some quality to the person on some unrelated factors, like I may stereotype people coming from certain type of certain geography, or I may stereotype people who are wearing glasses, or I may stereotype some people coming from different community. All these possibilities are there when we talk about stereotyping. So, that causes great error in the rating during the interview process. Then comes the similar to me bias. If I see my candidate very similar to me in terms of the performance, or in terms of the appearance, or the family background, or for interest or hobbies or college the person is coming from, it can be of different kind of similarity depending on what aspect of mine is very lovable to me. If I see that in another candidate, I may commit giving more marks to him or her, and that can cause certainly a rating error. How to address the rating errors? Addressing the rating error can be done by self-reflection, looking at and comparison. Comparison can help us to reflect. We can look at the scores given by others giving to the same candidate and compare that score with the scores I have given, and then can have a discussion why another person has given different scores, and then reflecting on whether my judgment was correct, or what other person is saying is also valuable, which I somehow did not consider. Role playing can be a very important way of assessing the general behavioral pattern. So, I put myself in a particular situation and role play that. I also am able to see, or the facilitator can see, how do I behave, and looking at that behavior causes again the self reflection, and then I may decide to or I may choose to change that behavior. Analytics again can be extremely helpful, looking at the data given by interviewers on particular tests to the large number of candidates, checking their performance on the job, comparing those scores with the other raters. All that analytics is possible, all that analysis is possible, and for that and that can give insights about errors and how to address those errors. Training is certainly a good method, can be so the structured inputs about conducting interview, and that includes preparation for the interview, behavior during the interview, behaving or working certain things, doing certain things after the interview. All that is part of the training process, and training can certainly help all of us to become better interviewers. So, towards the end we have a quick recap. We discussed about the recruitment process and the selection process in detail in this session, and as a point of quick recap, I must say that recruitment process starts from the notification of the vacancy to promotion or exit of the employees. Internal and external recruitment both are beneficial in different ways. Person organization fit is the single most criteria for the recruitment process. Selection is a critical process in the recruitment process. Reliability and validity are the most important criteria in the test of methods of selection. An interview can be a very effective tool for selection only and only if is like I with the if with the capital I, conducted with clear objective and appropriate methods like interview process following the star method etc., with the appropriate method with clear objective, interview can be a very effective tool for selection. So, here we conclude our session on recruitment and selection. Thank you.